everyone. Welcome to Our Power is Within. I'm your host, Chas Smith, and I am on a mission to inspire people to take their power back and help everyone realize that each and every one of us has a healer within our own self. When we can create an environment that supports healing and get out of our own way, we are truly capable of healing in mind, body, and soul. Will you continue to help me spread this message so that we can inspire even more people in this coming year? There are several ways that you can help support this podcast and spread the message of empowerment, healing, and possibility. You could take a moment to leave a 5-star rating or a quick review on Apple Podcasts, and you could share your favorite episode with a friend, or you could share an episode on social media and tag me at Our Power is Within. Another thing you could do is click subscribe. When you click subscribe, every new episode will be waiting for you and ready for you to listen so that you don't miss a great one. Because let's be honest, they're all awesome, right? Okay, so it's challenge time. Now, last week, our challenge was mirror work, and I would love to hear how it went for you. Did you actually do it? Did you even do it for one day maybe and have a chance to have that experience and notice what shows up for you? If you did get that opportunity, go to Instagram, find my mirror work post, and leave a comment and let me know what you discovered. This week's challenge actually builds off of last week's. So, last week, while we spent the time in the mirror looking within our own eyes into our own souls, this week we're actually going to choose a partner. So, whether that partner is a friend, a spouse, a child, ask them to commit with you to this challenge. And you will spend 1 minute every day sitting down together, looking into each other's eyes, and really seeing into one another's eyes. I know this might sound super uncomfortable, but it is such a powerful experience, and both of you get the benefits in the process. So make it fun. For today's guest, we have Jeff Craigen. He and I, wow, we had a wonderful conversation, you guys. And as usual, I'm extremely excited to share it with you. Jeff has this amazing recovery story, and he had some really beautiful awakenings along the way through his journey that he shares with us today. In Jeff's journey, he discovered the biggest thing that he was missing in his life was joy. He had been repressing his ability to feel and be with raw, real joy for so long in pursuit of perfection, being seen, and the need to know. I actually had a couple epiphanies myself throughout this conversation, and I learned quite a few things and new perspective shifts from Jeff today. So I really hope that this conversation does the same for you. Stay until the end and you will hear about his different offerings because Jeff does have an offer that's extremely affordable and a generous option for people who are not in a financial position to afford personal one-on-one coaching or a lot of the group coaching costs out there today. You will find all the links to connect with Jeff in the show notes as always, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Jeff, thank you so much for being here tonight or today with me and everyone listening.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm really excited. I know you got your own story and your own life experiences that have brought you to where you're at today. And I think you have a lot to offer. And I'm excited to get to share that with my audience. So, yes.
Yeah. Share it.
Yeah, I think that speaking of your own story, that's a great starting point is having your own story and your own healing from an autoimmune disease, right? Correct?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I actually watched your video online, which was really well done, by the way. Like, did you do that yourself?
I did, yeah. Well, I got a guy to edit it in Bali, but I put it together, and one of my buddies shot a bunch of the drone footage here in Bali. But yeah, I wrote the script, I wrote everything that I wanted to say, and yeah, it was cool.
Kind of came up with what footage you wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it was fantastic. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that was amazing." Well, anyways, I would love for you to actually get to share a little bit about that story with the audience here today, and especially would love to learn about what the pivotal point was where you finally knew that you were on the path to recovery and healing, because I know that after listening to your story, and you'll share it, but like most people, you went in a lot of different directions and tried a lot of things before you finally got to what you discovered was like the answer for you. So,
Oh
if you
yeah,
could share a little bit about all that and then tell us what really was that pivotal point.
for sure, for sure. Yeah. So it was in 2012 when it started. And basically, just to give you some context, because these things kind of happen since childhood. So I was the youngest of one brother, and I was always kind of chasing in his footsteps, and I was always looking to be the center of attention, looking to be seen, looking to be like, hey, did you see that? Did you watch that? Did you get that? And
Mm,
so that kind of progressed into my adult experience, and I found another way through an acting career that I was pursuing to really be seen and to pressure myself in order to be seen, right? And it just kind of kept going and going in that direction. But it was in 2012 when it started, and
what's it? Sorry not to interrupt you, but what is it?
oh yeah, so I had so just to give you some context, I had an incurable autoimmune disease called ankylosing spondylitis. I had osteoporosis in my feet, arthritis in my spine. I was allergic to 90 different foods, heart palpitations. My vision was going. I could barely walk, and I was supposed to be in a wheelchair by the time I was 25.
Wow.
Yeah, so that took me on a journey. But anyway, so I was in the gym training for a role on Netflix that I got for an acting role, and I was doing a deadlift, and 2 days later, I started to get some like back and leg pain, and I didn't really think anything of it. I just thought, oh, okay, it's just I probably injured it doing a deadlift, and that was probably what happened. And then it started to get a lot worse, and I was like, oh, maybe there's something really wrong here. Maybe there's something going on. So I was at my house that day, and my brother came over, and I stood up to like go give him a hug, and I couldn't stand up. My spine physically would not straighten, and I fell back down on my knees. And then and then all of a sudden I started to get like intense cluster headaches, and I was rushed to the emergency hospital. And I got to the emergency, and they ran all sorts of tests and blood tests and x-rays and CT scans and everything, and they didn't find anything specific, but they were curious about something, so they sent me to a rheumatologist. And the rheumatologist specializes in like more autoimmune disease type things and health related issues in that sort. So they sent me to this rheumatologist, and the rheumatologist gave me a blood test, and then they found the genetic, they call it autoimmune disease, ankylosing spondylitis, AS for short. Basically, it's arthritis in your spine. And from there, he began to tell me that, this is what's going to happen. Most people with this disease end up in a wheelchair or worse, unable to do any physical activity. You're going to have to be on these medications for the rest of your life. They're called biologics, and they're like ridiculous amount of money too. and something in me, I was a healthy, athletic guy, took care of myself, didn't smoke, didn't drink much, like really, took care of my mindset, took care of everything, right? It was positive, happy, really positive and happy. That was like my thing. I was always positive and happy, always optimistic. And yeah, and something in me and I was a personal trainer at the time too. And something in me just said, no, sorry, that's not going to happen. And the rheumatologist said, well, it's not a matter of like if it's going to happen or not. It's happening. So like, this is where you're going to end up. And I just said, no, sorry, I'm going to find a cure for this. And when I do, I'm going to bring it back to you and the world so that I can help other people with it. And then he said, well, even if you do find a cure, I won't be able to use it because it's not part of our protocol. And I just said, are you looking for a cure? And there was kind of a bit of silence. And then that moment I walked out and I just said, well, I'm on my own. And I went on my own and I went on a search and I tried everything you could possibly imagine. I tried chiropractic. I tried ozone injection therapy. I tried ayahuasca. I tried combo. I tried mushrooms. I tried, the paleo diet, the vegan diet, the pescatarian diet, the no food diet, the air diet, all these crazy things I tried. I tried drinking hydrogen peroxide for 70 days on 3 times a day on an empty stomach. That didn't work.
Oh.
And then I tried yoga, I tried physical activity, I tried rehabilitation, I tried physio, I tried acupuncture, I tried everything you could get your hands on. I tried meditations, I tried positive thinking, affirmations, repeating in the mirror, I am happy, I am whole, I am happy, I am whole. That didn't work. And there was sometimes like it would work a little bit and then it would not. And then it'd work a little bit and then it would get worse. And I was going to chiropractic at that time. And the chiropractor kept telling me like, oh, you have subluxation in your spine. And, this is what's causing it. So I would go to chiropractor and he would adjust me and I'd feel a little better. And then I'd come back like a week later and feel worse. And then one point he was adjusting me and like everything in my body was just like, no, do not touch me. Do not touch my body. This is not right. There's something's not right here. And my whole body just kind of like froze up. And then I kept searching and searching and searching and searching. And there was funny moments where, I've always been athletic and always been very fit. And basketball was one of my favorite sports. And I would see people playing basketball and I couldn't move like I used to. And I was getting skinny and I was just not in a good spot. And I would see people playing basketball at the park and I really wanted to play. And there was this one time where I got so angry, like just so mad that I couldn't play. Inside, I was just like steaming. And I remember, and at this point, like if I were to walk in a weird way, it would be excruciating. And at one point I just said like, you know what, screw this shit. Like, I don't give a shit if my spine breaks. I'm fucking playing basketball today and it's happening. And I did. And I went out and I played basketball. And at first it was like excruciating. And then I just focused on like, I just felt that like anger that I couldn't play like I used to. And then all of a sudden about halfway through, there was no pain. And I was playing and jumping and I was like, what the hell? Like, this is so weird. And then after the game, I was fine. And then I got home and I would sit down in front of the computer or something and there'd be excruciating pain. And I was like, how is that possible? Like, I go play basketball and I'm jumping around, but now I'm sitting down and there's pain. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, there's something not right here, And then from there, I just kept trying different things and trying different modalities. And I just, this was like 7.5 years in, like day in, day out, living with this over and over again. And at this point, my relationships were stripping away. My acting career was stripping away. Both my other careers were stripping away. Everything was just slowly kind of slipping from me. The finances were going away. And I was just kind of being brought to rock bottom, really. And yeah, it was about 7.5 years in. And at that point, the symptoms started to accumulate like crazy. I got a IgA food sensitivity test where they took a bunch of blood markers and told me what foods I was allergic to. and I was allergic to like 90 different foods. And it got to the point where I was allergic to like spinach and cucumber. And I was like, what the hell? Like, I love spinach, you know?
Oh.
And it just got worse and worse. And then I basically was hobbling home that day in an alleyway, and all of a sudden my body just started to like, it just froze up again, and I just everything froze, and I just fell on the concrete in the alleyway, and I just kind of laid there and was like, I think I'm dying. I think this is it. And I just started to weep, and I knew in my heart that I didn't I didn't want to commit suicide, but I didn't want to live like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I sat there for about, laid on the ground there for about, I don't know, 30 minutes or so. And then I managed to get to my feet, and I hobbled back home. And I got home that day, and my girlfriend was out, and I walked upstairs, upstairs. And as I got to the top of the stairs, the weight of everything brought me to my knees. And I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in any of that stuff really. I just was like, oh, universe, whatever, blah blah blah. And I was just brought to my knees, and when I got to my knees, I just looked up for whatever reason, and I said, if you're real, now's the fucking time. In those exact words. And nothing happened. And then about 4 or 5 seconds later, there was this surge of energy, and it entered through the top of my head. It was like a lightning bolt, and it ricocheted through my body. For some people this might sound woo-woo, but this is what happened, and this is what I want to share with y'all. So it entered through my body, and there was, all of a sudden I looked down at my right arm, and there was these holographic slide images, and I could see from when I was born to where I was now, and I could see all of the traumas. I could see all of the things in my life that accumulated into my body that were causing this dis-ease, and I could see it in this holographic slideshow, and I saw it, and it popped out of my arms, and it was shimmering, and then just went off my fingertips, and it was gone. Now, I wasn't on any medications. I never did any. I wasn't on any drugs. Never did any. And I was pure and clear at that point, and this is what was happening. And then I was sitting there weeping and laughing and crying and yelling, and all these crazy emotions were coming out. And all of a sudden, this little voice just said, look up, pay attention. And I looked up in the corner of the room, and there was all of a sudden this golden like flame that came in the room, and it was just like, and it started circulating in the room. And when it stopped circulating, appeared the face of Jesus. And it was a male, yes, but it was also the essence of a woman. It was everything. It was unconditional love, acceptance. It was unbounding joy and peace, like you cannot even put any words or imagine anything that comes close. And she just looked at me, didn't say a word, just looked at me. And then about 5 seconds later, just gone. And then there was these words that came to my head. And the words said, the power of life and death lies in your tongue, and those who eat its fruit will use it wisely. So over this course, I was brought, of course, to look at the Bible. And I picked up the Bible, and I read the first bit, and I read how, like, the wrath of God and all this, and I was like, this guy's an asshole, and I hucked the Bible.
Oh my goodness.
And and then I was kind of periodically brought back to it again, and I started to read more about how the wrath of God was because people started to try to play God. And it started to teach me about how I was creating my own suffering by my need to understand and figure it out and play God. And it started to show me that these people in a power of authority had conditioned me with their words. So I always tell people when I coach them is that you need 4 things to take on a new paradigm. You need 1, a power of authority; 2, a heightened emotion; 3, image or mental image; 4, repetition and consistency. So these doctors were saying, this is what you have. It's incurable. You're not going to be able to walk. You're going to be in a wheelchair. You have to take these things. So when I went to the doctors, I was looking for answers. So I was open to hearing whatever answer they gave me. Does it mean it's truth? Absolutely not. So what happened, I was shown how I was creating my own suffering by trying to understand and figure out something that I thought was what it was based on a power of authority had told me. And I started to see how this dis-ease was my need to understand it. And I started to see how the whole reason I was getting sick was because I wasn't trusting in Christ, and Christ is the peace that surpasses all understanding. So I started to see how this thing for many years I thought was to me, but it was actually for me. Now, I started to kind of be taught like how this happens and what's going on and why this happens in people, and how I can help other people with this. And there's another book that is really good that helped me along called Dr. Sarno, The Mind-Body Prescription. It touches, in my opinion, on the surface of it, and it gets a lot deeper, in which I'll go into.
Did you find that after this encounter or before?
I had someone showed it to me before, and they were like, "Yeah, I think your stuff's emotional there, man." And I was like, "Nope, it's physical. I know my body. I'm a personal trainer. I know my body. Thanks for coming out. Sorry."
Oh, okay. So you had heard of it or had somebody mention it, but you weren't ready to really
I
hear the
wasn't ready
message
to
yet.
hear it. I wasn't ready to
Yeah.
listen, and that's what I tell my clients. I'm like, if you're not ready, you're not ready. Yeah, like people have to be ready to listen. They have to be willing to let go of what they think they know and have been told. And yeah, and so uh, I was like, basically shown right away what was going on, but I just wasn't ready to take it in because I didn't trust, right? I didn't trust that this would actually be happening. Like it's so physical. How can this be psychological or emotional?
Right.
Right. And as a personal trainer, I was like, no, I know my body. I'm stubborn and I have a lot of pride. I know my body. And yeah. And then, some years later, I was like, all right, I should have listened. My bad.
But
Uh,
it's funny because at the same time you said, I know my body. There's probably also some part of you that actually didn't recognize your body anymore, having had this like background of fitness and strength and then not
oh,
even being able to stand. It's like that pride's like, I know my body, but then there's this
uh,
undertone of, wait, do I know my body right now? I don't even know
yeah,
who I am.
exactly. Yeah, you're bang on. Like it was pride to hold on to this idea of I knew my body to keep me safe. That's what it was.
hmm
And because then I would have to actually accept the fact that, oh crap, this could be emotional. And if it is, why would I need the pain? Obviously, the pain is a lot more bearable than a feeling of wanting to die. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, anyway, so after that, yeah, the after that encounter, the pain wasn't gone, but it was a lot less. And I started to go back to the gym. And I was in the gym about a week later, and I was doing a sit up. And every time I'd do a sit up, there'd be excruciating pain. And this time I go to do a sit up. And I'm like, I go sit up, and I'm like, I start almost like sitting up like a rocking chair, like going back and forth and back and forth. And I'm like, what the hell? There's no pain. And I kept going to like, and I was testing it. And I was like, there's no, what the? And I just started laughing and laughing and laughing and crying and laughing and crying and laughing and crying. And in like awe and euphoria and just insane. And then the next day, all the symptoms were gone. I was back to eating things normal. I was back to working out. I was back to living a life of just enjoying my life. And it was a miracle. And yeah, that opened the door of, okay, well, you know, here I am, and here's something that said could not be cured, or incurable, they call it, and it's gone. I'm like, so the question is, am I an anomaly, or can I help other people with this? And if I can, let's try it out. So that took me on a journey. Like, I didn't even mean to be a coach. It just kind of happened, to be honest. So that took me
Mm.
on a journey. And I reached out to someone when I was in Bali at the time. This was a while back. And there was this guy in the spa, and he was hobbling around with a knee pain, and he had back pain too. And there was something like intuitively in me that just said, I feel like there's something else going on here. And so I went up to him and I just said, hey man, like, you know, I think there's something else going on with your knee and your back, and I would love to explore it with you. Like, no charge. I just want to see, you know, what we can do. And he's like, all right, let's give it a shot. So we talked a bit, and then we worked together for about, what was it, 5 to 6 weeks. And during that 5 to 6 weeks, he was supposed to get surgery on his knee because he was told he had a torn meniscus in his kneecap. And I just said, man, hold off on the surgery. Let's just go through this. I really feel like this is going to open a door. So we did. And in that time frame, his knee completely went back to normal, didn't have any more knee pain. His back pain receded. And I didn't know this, but at the end of it, he gave me a testimonial, and he turned out to be a psychotherapist. So I was like, whoa, this is interesting, because here's a guy who has training in this area, but wasn't aware of the things that I was sharing with him, and yet it allowed him to get his health back.
Mm.
So I was like, whoa, like this is going to be really new. Like, I don't think many people are going to really know about this, to be honest. And so
What
that
were
started.
some of the things you did with him? Like, what were some of the tools you used, or like, what did you guys go through?
Yeah. So as someone in his line of work, there's a constant need to know. There's a constant need to know and understand, right? Which creates more of a dis-ease and disrupts the peace that surpasses all understanding. So we started to look at why he needs the symptom. There's a part of him that actually needed to have the symptom, and why, right? And we started to see that when he had the symptom, that's when he got the most love and attention and nurturing from those around him. But when he didn't, he wouldn't have the ability to ask for help. So his body started to create the help in which he was uncomfortable feeling in his weakness. As most men are, the greatest fear for men is to look weak. So it's funny because it literally corresponded, like, what do you need, right? And what he needed was support. And it's amazing. There's a lot more to it, obviously, but that's just to kind of give you an idea of how it comes back to areas in the person's life where they overcompensate and push for feelings of inadequacy, or they undercompensate because they're too afraid to step forward.
Yeah, that's so common. Oh my gosh.
Mhm. Yeah. So the body, it all comes back to trust, right? It all comes back to trust because we don't we don't trust that we will be provided for, and so we try to do it ourselves all the time, and we try harder and harder and harder and harder, or we don't trust that we can step forward and be met in the things that we want and deserve in our lives. So we step back and we never step. And it's ironic because people with back pain and leg pain, they have a fear of moving forward.
Hmm, interesting. When you when you said that you were having this doing the sit-ups and then you had this like all this pain, then the pain went away, then you had this laughing and crying euphoria episode, and then eventually the pain was gone. Did you do anything? I mean, like you realized that there was this emotional component, but at any time did you do any type of emotional release work or like go into the traumas to heal old wounds, or was it really just the awareness?
No, you know what it was? It was repressed joy.
But that was what it was for you?
Yeah, it was repressed joy. I had such a tendency of being a perfectionist that I put tremendous amount of pressure on myself, which enraged myself inside. But really, I wanted to enjoy myself and my imperfections.
Wow.
So then what
Interesting.
happened? Yeah, it's fascinating, right? So then what happened is all of that repressed joy came out, but I felt so guilty about feeling the joy because I was so worried that if I felt joy, it would go back to normal and it wouldn't last.
So what did you do to help yourself to finally overcome those limiting beliefs and like trust to allow the joy? Because that's so common. I mean, I know I've experienced that. It's like it's that classic sabotage. Like when you're feeling like super happy and everything is great, there's some undertone, something that we do that happens unconsciously because of that undertone of fear of it not lasting.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, many years of my life, I had equated joy with pain because I grew up where I would enjoy myself to be ridiculed and shamed and criticized and called psycho for the amount that I enjoyed myself. So I learned
Mm.
early on that my full enjoyment of myself is not welcome. So there's an old saying that says when you keep the peace on the outside, you start a war on the inside. And then when you start a war on the outside continually, you disrupt the peace on the inside. So it's a balance. I had to start to see in myself the point where I needed to be perfect, and why was it so important for others to see me as perfect? Because I had already rejected myself, because in my imperfection was the perfection.
Uh-huh.
So to answer the question, what I did specifically is I started to see in my life areas where I hid myself in order to maintain a perfectionistic frame to those around me.
Wow.
And what happened was, that's why I say it's joy, is because I learned to be okay with my mistakes, to be okay with my imperfections, to be okay with messing up, to be okay that pain is not a detriment, but it's actually a blessing and a warning to show us where in our lives we're pressuring and trying to control and understand instead of resting in the peace that surpasses all understanding, which is the message of Christ.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. I always say that pain is an indicator of how out of alignment we are with our soul.
Yeah. And oftentimes the alignment out of the soul is joy. It's because we start to pressure ourselves to live this life, to succeed, to get money, to get the relationship, to be the one who holds it all together, and eventually that makes the one fall apart. And then when they fall
Yeah.
apart, that's usually when they heal.
Yeah, and it's so funny though because joy is so important, right? But then you so often, and I'm sure you had this period, obviously, where when we find ourselves in this like state of chronic dis-ease, chronic illness, chronic pain, whatever it is, it's almost like joy. What joy we had is usually the first to go, because our life gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and it's really hard to really recreate that joy again for people, and especially when you're right, like, and then once you're in this state, we think we're broken, we need fixed, and we're on this like never ending, just like constant feeling like we're failing quest
Mhm.
to find the solution to fix ourselves, which just robs us even more of the joy when we're constantly disappointed over and over again.
Exactly. And and then on top of that, it's a self perpetuating cycle, because then you have the social idea and the belief that is pushed on people that they have to do self growth and development over and over and over, which continues to shame themselves for not being whole.
Right.
So it's just a never ending cycle where you have people continuing to try to better and do and grow and develop and personal development, and over and over and over and over and over. And that's part of the disease too. And so, because it's like they just take the behavior and transfer it into another thing, which that thing creates more disease. So,
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
then you have,
That's common with the perfectionism,
oh God,
especially if you find like a healing quote unquote program, and then all of a sudden now you need to do said program so perfectly, and it's like you're just transferring the same exact like
exactly,
traits over to something else.
exactly. And,
Mhm.
like, I have nothing against these people, but the thing that we need to look at is like the truth behind what's actually happening on a physiological and psychological level. Like, Joe Dispenza and Tony Robbins and these guys, like, it's making a profit off of people's shame. Where it's like, when I coach people and I take them through this journey, there's times where I tell them, like, no, sorry, I'm not coaching you. What? Why? Because you're fine. You're just, you're looking for the next thing. You need to go live your life.
Yep, yep, yep.
You know what I mean? There's like a never ending search. And it's a never ending shame cycle of, oh, I need to do more. Oh, I need to do this program. I need to do this thing. And like, I'm a truth seeker, and I share with people, like, I'm going to show you a bunch of stuff, but then you're going to forget about it and you have to go live your life. And I don't want you to come back.
Hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's about setting people free in their wholeness. Everybody's already whole and complete, but it's about shining the light on the part of themselves that feels and thinks they're not.
Yeah, I love this. I love this. This is so up my alley because I don't know, I'm just so, so, so passionate about really inspiring people to understand this exact message. You're saying it so well, just that we need to there's so many people out there profiting, and I get it from one perspective, because somebody has their own experience, something that worked for them, and then they're super passionate and then they want to share it, or like we all have to make a living somehow, but there's like a million people and industries and modalities and things out there that are literally making a profit off of people's pain, but it's only perpetuating
Of
the
course.
dis-ease
Yeah, of course. It's
and
like,
continuing to disempower people. It's like, and I don't want to even say that, like, it's not said thing that continues to disempower said person, because we only can choose to empower ourselves. So we're choosing to give our power away to all these other things and
yeah,
modalities and people.
for sure. And that's the thing, is that no matter which way we cut it, people are, there's a verse that says it really well, in the verse from Christ, and it says, those who seek should not stop seeking until they find. And then when they find, they will be disturbed. And then when they're disturbed, they will marvel. And then when they marvel, they will reign over all. And then when they reign, they will finally rest in the peace that surpasses all understanding. So it's like we search, and then we think we got it. And then we search, and then we think we got it. We go, oh, okay, I figured it out. And then we realize at some point that we'll never figure it out. And we're not meant to know. The need to know was the thing that disrupted from resting in the peace of not knowing.
Do you know what verse that was?
Yeah, it's what verse is it? It's in the Lost Gospel of Thomas, where apparently that was the part of the Bible that was taken out.
Okay.
And it's a profound verse. And yeah, I mean, it's I don't know what verse it is. Let's see.
Maybe
It's
you
in
can
Lost
look it up
Gospel
and
of
tell me
Thomas.
later,
Yeah,
and I can add it in the show notes because I really liked it.
it's so powerful, right? And
Yeah.
what happens is people will keep seeking until they go, I'm done. And then that's when they find out that that's the peace, right? That's the peace.
Right.
And then it
So,
becomes from a place of joy. It doesn't become from a place of pressure all the time. It comes from, what do I enjoy in my life? Like, for instance, this whole thing around morning routines. They're great, but if our morning routine becomes a pressure, then we start to resent our morning routine, which makes more disease and pain. So finding ways to just enjoy being silly, being a kid, being fun, playing with it. Sometimes you don't want to do things, and that's part of the balance.
yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like I totally get that. I've had that where I had like a really great routine and I actually like really enjoyed it. And then though it became something where I became very rigid and like forced it to continue, and
Mm-hmm.
then it lost the essence. And it's funny because you can even do that with all good things. Like, is
Mm-hmm.
it great to ground and connect with the earth every day? Sure. Is it great to get sunshine every day? Yes. Is it great to be silly and dance and play every day? Yes. And is it great when you start forcing yourself to do it? Maybe
No.
not. Like if one day you're legit just extremely exhausted and you just want to like lay and rest, that has to be okay too.
Yeah. For me, like the ocean is the biggest teacher, where it's like there's a high tide and there's a low tide. And if those tides didn't exist, there wouldn't be an ocean. And if you look at like the ocean in general, like it's always changing. And if the high tide resisted the low tide, it wouldn't, the tension would build up and the tension would create dis-ease in the harmony of the ocean.
It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. And it's really interesting, because I get a lot of people and they come to me and they go, how do you heal? What do I do? And I'm like, stop doing everything that you're doing to try to heal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know, and you're at a point where that makes sense, but you were once at a point.
Of course.
There was once a point where you were like that would have not made sense
Of
from one
course.
aspect. It would been like, okay, but I didn't do all these things and I got sick, and now I'm doing all these things. How do I stop doing these things? I'll just still be sick because I already got sick not doing them. So it can be
Exactly.
confusing to understand.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I don't say that straight up to people. It's a journey that I bring them down. But
Hmm.
it's it's like the person the person doesn't have a pain or disease because they have a pain and disease. They have things in their life in which they continue to pressure themselves in perfection, and that resulted in pain or disease.
Hmm.
So it was never the pain and disease that was the issue. The issue was why they needed to continue to create that in their life.
Mm, I
And it's just
see.
built up over and over and over again through the years. And eventually, Sigmund Freud says it best: unconscious emotions will never die. And they forever will live on and later come out in uglier ways.
So do you believe that some people do need to like recognize what their repressed emotions are? Like Dr. Sarno, talks about uncovering like repressed rage, but there can be a whole slew of different things that we can have show up, and like notice like, oh my God, I never knew I was like holding on to that.
Yes, for sure. And what I've come to see is that for a long time, I thought it was about repressed rage. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, it's the rage, it's the rage, it's the rage. And it's not the rage. The rage is the the rage is the person's anger at their own sensitivity, because the sensitivity shows that they're weak and imperfect. So it's easier to get angry at that part of themselves than feel the weakness in their imperfection of feeling their sensitivities.
Wow, that's so well said, and that's so true in my own personal experience. I do feel like in all the times I've journaled, done expressive writing, like the bulk of what has come out has been anger inward at a
Yeah,
part of my own self.
of course,
Hmm.
right? Because
Yeah, for
that,
not honoring a boundary,
yeah,
which is weakness, for
totally.
not standing in truth, for not wanting, yeah, for putting uh, anger, for putting so much pressure on myself and this need to be perfect and always do all these things and to be rigid. It's so true.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, right?
Wow.
That's the internal rage where the child just wants to be the free child, but the adult inside them is like, no, no, you need to have this together. No, you can't leave the presentation. No. And then the child's like, well, fine, I just want to go surf. Like that's the tension that gets created. And
Yeah.
and when people don't listen to the sensitivity, that's when they get thyroid issues, that's when they get tinnitus. It's like our bodies are so intelligent, and they're always for us, even when we think and believe they're not.
Yeah, it's so true. It's just a hard one to grasp sometimes when you're in the thick of it.
Of course, yeah. And I
Yeah.
have nothing but compassion for people who are in it. And because I've been there, I've been to
Hmm.
that dark spot, I've been to that spot of suicide, I've been to that spot many times. And
Right.
and I can honestly say from that position of strength that I would do it all over again, because it was showing me the sensitivity in which I locked up in two ways. One, by making everything a joke and being humorous all of the time. Two, by being hostile and aggressive or angry at those around me.
Interesting. Okay.
So it can go both ways. There's you look at cancer patients, and usually cancer patients are probably the most positive and happy people. Like there's a over optimisticness to cancer patients that I've noticed. And they have a tendency to always want to take care of other people instead of taking care of themselves. So their body puts them into a position where they need to be taken care of
Mm.
to
Yeah.
feel all of those feelings they don't want to feel.
Right.
This journey is not about feeling better. It's about feeling the things in which we thought we needed to feel better.
Say that again.
This journey is not about feeling better. It's about it's about feeling the reasons why we need to feel better.
Ah, I like that because it's
Right?
so true. But I just like it. I like how you said that.
and,
Yeah.
and then you have people around going, oh, do the mindsets, do the affirmations, do the positivity, do the thinking, do the meditations, gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. And it's like, we don't need to force ourselves to be positive. We just be. And that brings the joy, right? You look at a child is just able to be, but their beingness is the thing that flows through them that allows them to feel exuberant bliss and joy.
Yeah, but not all children feel that. I mean, are you talking that just at a really young age?
No, I'm just talking about how I've always been curious about how kids, they just are able to be. They're so intelligent with their nervous systems that they don't even try. They just, if they're fearful, they're fearful. If they cry, they cry. if they yell, they yell. But that's the
Right.
thing that allows them to be. It's like the high tide and the low tide. They're not resisting it, and they're not trying to understand their emotions.
Right. I don't think I was like intellectualizing my emotions when I was like 6 years old.
Exactly, right?
Maybe I was by 10. Maybe by 10, but not 6.
That's the point, right? Is that we had a parental figure go, "Hey, why are you crying?" And then the kid had to understand how they felt instead of just feeling how they felt.
Yeah.
Right? You look
Yeah.
at the story of the Garden of Eden. It's like verbatim what we're going through in our society, where you have it's such a beautiful, simple story where you have Adam and Eve naked in the garden, naked and unashamed. All of a sudden, there's an apple, and the apple is bitten, and that gives them the knowledge of good and evil, the understanding of good and evil. And then in the story, you have God, and He goes, "Adam, where are you?" Meaning, like, where are you? Right? Like, where's your thought? Like, where are you? I don't see you. I don't find you. And Adam's reply is, "Well, I hid because I was naked and ashamed." Now, if you're God, you already know the answer. So he asks, "Who told you that you were naked?" Because I didn't tell you. Who told you? And he already knew that if Adam replied, the fruit was already bitten, therefore it disrupted the peace that surpasses all understanding. So our shame in understanding, our shame in needing to know the things that God knows, was the thing that brought us suffering. You know what I mean? It's a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful story. And then you have Christ that came in and said, "Hey, here I give you peace, I leave with you, and peace I give. Not the peace that the world can give, do I give. I am the peace that surpasses all understanding." And you have the image of Christ bearing the shame on the cross for the garden that was once riddled with understanding and shame. So it's really interesting when you look at it in a different lens, where our need to know and our need to understand and our need to get it right, to figure it out, to make it perfect, is actually the thing that disrupts creation.
Wow. I've never looked at it all this way, so this is awesome. I'm learning so much. It's like on some level, you're putting it all together in a way that I just is really making sense for me right now and hitting home.
Cool. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and and everybody has access to it when they choose. It's
Hmm.
everybody has a choice, and I can just speak from my own experience. Has changed my life
It really sounds like it.
monumentally. There's so much peace, internal peace in my heart, and there's no other feeling when you get your health back and you discover wholeness and joy and peace and play and fun and that childlike wonder and imagination and just the laughter and the enjoyment of my full self in every capacity. That is what it's all about.
Yeah. I mean, that is the goal, right? Well, we think,
Mm-hmm.
we think, but then it's like the minute we even get to tap into a part of it, all
Yeah,
this stuff comes up.
yeah, for sure. But I think there's a big thing and a misconception where it's like, it's not about going into demons and going into the darkness. No, it's about rejoicing in the things, in all things, in a sense where trusting and letting go that those things will be presented in due time, and they will. But sometimes we have to trust that process and trust that sometimes, most of the time with people who I encounter, they have a hard time trusting,
Hmm.
and they have a hard time letting go in trusting in their so-called weakness, right? But that's actually the strength. Jesus says it beautifully. He says, when you are weak, I am strong, right? And when we get out of the way and we trust, we're in a state where everything is already done.
Right. So true. Oh my goodness. And a lot of that too is like when we get sick at first, we just want to feel better so we can have our old life back. But our old life is what? Our old life, our old habits, our old need to control, need to know, perfectionistic tendencies, all these things is what got us sick. So
Exactly.
ideally, we can't go back to the old life. We have
No.
to do everything different.
Yeah. You look at like
Yeah.
the word dis-ease, right? It implies that the person is not at ease.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they weren't at ease a long time ago. And then that just caught up. So the pain and disease, it's a gift, it's a blessing. Do people need to go there? No. But some people, they do need to go down that journey before they hit rock bottom. But then at the bottom, that's when they feel the rock at the bottom.
Hmm. Absolutely. When you so speaking of like previous life and where you are now,
Mm-hmm.
you were saying that you had these totally different career paths and you never
Mm-hmm.
intended to be a coach.
Yeah.
What point was it that you were in your healing where you just knew that you couldn't go back to like your old lifestyle? Like even when you were on your path and you were starting to feel better, were you still of the mindset you were going to go back to acting and all your other career
Yeah,
options?
it was crazy. I was acting, and my pain was like it was going the way right at the time, and I started to out of nowhere get auditions for people in wheelchairs or back pain, and I was like, "What the shit?" I
Ah,
was like, "You got to be kidding me!" And I was like, "Oh my god! Like I don't want to go back into this, Like I don't want to. I don't want like I've lived this life already.
yeah.
And it was like God was just like, "Hey, you've played this character a long time. Do you want to keep playing it, or what do you want to do here, bud?" And so yeah, I stepped away, and I just was like, "No, I can't separate the two right now. So I need to have clarity on knowing myself first, so that I don't lose myself."
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Now day to day, do you still have physical, like acute physical things show up in your life? And if you do, how do you approach them nowadays?
No, I don't. Honestly, I can say that honestly that I don't. Um, and if I do say have like a headache or something like I don't know, to give you an example, like a hamstring hurt or something surfing, I always just get curious. I get curious as to what this could be telling me. And also I let it go. I really do. I just trust that my body has the capacity and my nervous system and my immune system have the capacity to come back to wholeness.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's but yeah, I'm doing all the sports I want to do again. I'm doing all the activities and flips and jumps, and yeah, it's amazing. You know, looking at my life now, I'm like, I would have never, ever, ever thought that I would be feeling like I'm 18 in my 30s.
Right. Did you ever think you were going to be living abroad, or was that always part of the plan?
I had no idea. No, it's I got out of a 5-year relationship, and then was just didn't want to stay around Canada for the winter, so I went to Bali, and then the first wave hit here, and I just stayed. But it's so funny how a lot of this was tied to my previous relationship, where I on some level manifested this experience because I was so afraid of being taken care of and trusting that someone was going to be able to handle my too muchness.
Too muchness is a big one.
Yeah. And
It's
so,
funny, we can feel like too much and not enough all at the same time, right? Like
exactly.
never
Yeah.
feel good enough, but always feel like too much.
Yeah, exactly.
It does relate though, actually, because I guess if I'm not good enough, I'm too much for
Yeah.
anyone because of my not good enoughness
Exactly.
in a sense, or because I'm not good enough because I'm too much. Like you could look at it.
It can go either way. It's like the same way
Yeah.
like someone who calls someone a narcissist is actually narcissistic,
Yeah.
right? It's like we are everything. And the moment we deny anything, we're no longer whole. Like we all have the capacity to be everything. And yeah, it's funny because my ex, her name was the same initials as my autoimmune disease.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I always say she was my cure of my disease, and bless her heart, she was there and she got me through some amazing, uh, crazy times in my life. Without her, I don't think I would have made it. Um, but it was funny because when I was so afraid to show tears in that relationship because I couldn't just do it with no symptom. So a symptom made it a societal, acceptable, normal to feel something that I already felt, but give me a reason to feel it.
Right.
So,
Yes.
so then when the symptom left, I was brought with all these tears, and sure enough, the reaction from my tears with no symptom was not a good one. It was like, oh, don't cry, don't do that. And it was like, okay, it's time to go. And and by any means, I don't say this to blame her or anything like that, because people who are uncomfortable with emotions in themselves will shame or ridicule other people unknowingly because it touches on the part of themselves that they have to look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we're
And,
both in
and
the same game, really.
yeah, and it's just like when if you go through something that's, very heavy and you're very sad, the person who they don't mean to not be able to hold space for you when they're like, oh, it's okay, everything's going to be okay, when they kind of like, it seems like they're downplaying your experience rather than holding space. And it's not on purpose. It's totally unconscious because they can't hold space for that amount of pain because
Yeah,
of they're not able to even hold it for themselves in a sense or be aware of it.
exactly. Yeah, if
Yeah.
we haven't gone through it, then we'll try to get away from it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And yeah, this is a wild journey, but there was something amazing and something crazy that started to happen later on in life when I was here in Bali. I started to see people very deeply. I could see like almost into their hearts and like what was going on and what were they struggling with and stuff. And why I say this is because I was so used to having my energy fixated on other people, because when
Hmm.
my energy was away from myself, then I wouldn't feel all the things inside. So I would always fixate and try to fix people and change people and help them and continue to serve them. And it was my way to survive. So when I was on my journey here, coming back to my heart, I was met with all the things in which I had to leave my body, which was profound.
Wow, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it was really wild.
You we've already kind of briefed on this. You've
Yeah.
already made it clear you're not really into routines per se. But do you have like general types of self-care activities that you do enjoy doing more regularly than not?
Yeah, for sure. Like I love things that light me up and make me passionate. Like I love playing guitar and just creating from a space of just like no, like just enjoyment, like whatever note
Mhm.
comes, it comes. And I love ecstatic dance. I love just the freedom to make noise and to move and to do whatever and pretend to be a chicken and like like for real, like we were on the dance floor the other day, and we're dancing, my buddy and I, we just look at each other. It was like the whole world stopped, and we're both chickens, and we just started having a chicken fight. And
Oh
it was
my
like,
God, I love it.
and it was like that. I love the routine. Like the routine for me is like that childlike imagination and wonder, and I see the world in the different lens, and my meditation is being every day. That's my
Interesting. Okay, because I was going to ask you if you still do engage in any, little rituals like any kind of stillness practice or meditation or anything like that.
um not really, to be honest. I just really, yeah, I meditate all day. It's in a state of just being, and I find it way more enjoyable. And it's still like, it's really nice. What I've noticed is, I mean, yeah, I like boxing, and I like physical activities and surfing, and like that to me, surfing is like, it's a meditation and a half. Like, just out in the water, and like the other day I went for a moonlight surf, and the
Mm.
stars were over me, and it was just like, oh my god, like my meditation is experiencing life, not sitting on a mat for 2 hours.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Like just being present to the experiences that you're having in life.
Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of funny, like uh it's like the moment we say like, okay, I'm going to be present to life, we're actually not present to life. But
Hmm.
once we just let go of trying to be present and trying to be here, then we're met.
Oh, that's so true. I can so relate to this. I literally can think right now of encounters when I go on my daily beach walks, which sometimes aren't walks anymore because I was noticing that daily walk that was so joyful started becoming very rigid because I'm very aware that that might be my biggest downfall, and I think it's probably what is the thing that I'm still working through is like releasing rigidity out of my life.
Yeah.
So it's very common for things to become rigid over time with me.
Mm.
And so I noticed that suddenly I was becoming very rigid with my walks, where then if I didn't get up and do it one day, I would be shaming myself or angry at myself because or thinking I'm not doing something that keeps me healthy.
Yeah.
So anyways, sometimes now my walks are actually me taking a cup of coffee and just laying on the beach when I'm just tired and don't feel like walking.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing good with that. But yes, you're so right. Like there's so many times I can think of when I'm walking along, when I'm actually like trying to be present, it's not the same as, and then I can think of all these other encounters like today where all of a sudden I saw this like big, I don't know, I felt like they were a big old posse of birds hanging out, seagulls, and they were so funny, and I just got so lost in the moment, like just standing there observing them and watching them
Yeah.
clean themselves in the ocean and their
Yeah.
interactions, and it's so different when it's like that and organic.
Yeah, for sure. And Jesus says it amazingly. He says, "Until you become as innocent as little children, and take off your clothes and stomp on them, you won't enter the kingdom of God." And it's like, when we look at kids, like the other day I was on the beach, and there was this kid, and he was just running in joy, like smiley face, running down the beach, like woo. And then all of a sudden this big wave comes in, and he turns and stops and looks at the wave and just starts screaming and like, ah! And then the wave comes in, and it just stops in front of him, and then he looks at it and just goes and runs away. And
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, that's what we all are. Like, our attention is taken in the flow of life. And the moment that we try to rigidize our attention, rigidize, I don't know if that's a word, but anyway, the moment that we try to capture and control this thing, we keep the flow of life from happening. We keep our instincts from not trusting themselves. And like what you're saying is like walking on the beach. Like, that, a lot of people, they go, oh, okay, yeah, that's something I'm still working on, and then they go and meditate and they try to change it on the map. Where it's like, no, you change it while in the moment, right? Like you
Mm.
do something different. Where it's like, say you're walking on the beach, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm just gonna turn my walk into this like annoyance walk that I'm feeling inside, and start to make it like a dance, like whatever it is, just something to take away the rigidity, to start to bring a new experience. And people will notice is that when they do the weird thing that they wanted to do, that's when they're met with all the uncomfortability of the repressed joy.
Hmm. I had that experience the other day too on the beach. I I never usually bring like my phone with me to the beach because I just want to be well, there you go. I want to be present with nature, not interrupted by my phone.
Yeah.
But one day I wanted music, and I really just was like, I want music. I'm going to take my phone to the beach and put it on airplane mode and listen to music. And then this song came on, and I just everything inside me wanted to dance like I was in my kitchen and no one was looking, but there were
Yes.
people on the beach. And I noticed, because I've been really committed lately to being really aware, and I'm at a place where I'm ready to do things differently, right? Like I've got to do things differently to get different results.
Mm-hmm.
And so at first I like kind of tensed up and I was like ignoring this craving to dance. And then I'm looking around and I have this internal dialogue like, what are you doing? This is it. This is exactly what you need. This is your moment. This is the opportunity for you to make a new choice and take a different action, to do something different. Like, who are you trying to impress here?
Yeah.
What does it matter?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
then I just like said screw it and I started dancing, and it's like the first time in my life I ever just danced in front of anyone like the way I would in my kitchen alone, like silly style,
Yeah.
and I was elated.
Right.
I felt like that was a huge stepping stone.
Yes, and that's it. You nailed it. That's what it's all about. I remember,
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's what I want the message to share with people, is just to come back to that childlike innocence, where it's like, how would you live your life if you were the only one in the world at every moment? That is the thing that's keeping from joy. The
Yeah.
thing where you want to dance in the supermarket, the thing where you want to burp loud, the thing where you want to, like the other day I was going into the shop and the guy was trying to scan my temperature, and like everybody just walks by like sheep and gets their temperature scanned, and he points the gun at me and I just fucking like full out burst into ninja mode and we have a battle. And it was like so much fun, and he was having so much fun, and in that moment the joy took us out of this whole serious perfectionistic paradigm that had to be maintained, and for a moment took us out into this imaginary world of just fun.
Hmm.
And then he forgot to scan me and I walked in and grabbed an apple.
That is hilarious. I feel like in this conversation I just had my own epiphany. And it's that if I crave that life, if I crave that flow, that joy, that childlike, that inner child playfulness, if I crave to be able to just sing out loud if I'm riding my bike down the street listening to music in headphones, or if I crave to just dance in any way I want, that I feel called to move my body even if people are around, but then I fear doing it and don't do it. I
Mm-hmm.
almost wonder if that is it's in essence perpetuates the dis-ease, the physical symptoms, because if I have the physical symptoms, I have an excuse to not have to show up in that way for myself,
Absolutely.
which would be scary until you do it and then I realize it's not that scary.
You nailed it. Why is it so interesting that when you hear people with symptoms, they withdraw from crowds and social interactions?
Uh-huh.
Because they don't want to be real in what they're going through, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's you nailed it. It's easier to run than to be real. I was talking to one of my clients recently, and he was very suicidal, and I was like, all right, well, you're going to die. So, I mean, yeah, why don't you just say fuck it? And he's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, I mean, you're going to die. Like, if you want to commit suicide, you're going to commit suicide. So why don't you just take this next 2 weeks and just live how you want to live in your life? Because it's not going to matter anyway, right? And what we started to discover was that he didn't want to die. He was just afraid to live in the exuberantness of this childlike silliness and play and wonder and speaking out loud and saying the thing that no one wants him to say. You know what I mean? And that was the thing that was keeping him depressed.
That's so crazy.
All right. So no one wants to die. They're just afraid to be who they are because they're worried about being rejected for who they truly are. So they might as well reject themselves because it's a lot easier to die than feel that feeling.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. So it's literally like it all comes down to like, hey, I actually have to start taking the action. And like you said way earlier, you have to actually start like living your life authentically the way you really truly desire.
Yeah, for sure. And this brings me to a really interesting point where now in our society it's all about transmuting emotions and changing emotions and stuff. And it's like, what if God is presenting these energies inside of you because it's exactly what needs to be expressed so that other people can express the repressed energy inside of them? But the moment that we change it, the moment that we do something different with it, the moment that we move it around, we disrupt that. And I think there's a balance to that where it's like, when we know ourselves, we're known. But when we don't know ourselves, we're in poverty, and it is us who is that poverty. So when we can come from that place and live from a place of peace, patience, kindness, joy, happiness, and the fruits of the Spirit, and we can rest in the peace that surpasses all understanding, and know that in our weakness, in our tears, that is where the joy is, right? That is where the bliss is. Jesus says, those who mourn will be comforted. And mourning is weeping. And that's why it says joy comes in the morning. And so when we look at it from a different lens, we start to see that the expression in the vulnerability is the joy in our souls.
I love it. I was writing that one down. I gotta write the good one-liners down.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I'll tell you one little quick story. There's this. I love kids. I just love the freedom of the kid of children. And I was in the cafe the other day, and I was kind of having a weird day, and I walk in the cafe, and we're out in the grass, and there's all these like little concrete slabs, and I'm walking, and I go to step, and this little girl comes up, and she's like, "Oh, hey, be careful! It's lava. The grass is lava." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know." And she's like, "Yeah, be careful next time." And we just started laughing, and she was like dead serious, right? But it was so cool because she intuitively could feel like, hey, get out of your head, like enjoy this fun, enjoy this play, like see the world as this imagination, like don't be so serious all the time. And I asked her, I said, hey, what do you think the answer to life is? And she was just like, dogs. And I was like, okay. And then I asked her the next day I saw her again, and I was like, hey, what do you think the answer to life is today? And she's like, birds and cats. And I was like, well, I thought you said it was dogs. And she's like, yeah, whatever I enjoy in front of my face. And I was just like, oh my God, that is profound. And she's like, you're weird. I'm going to go play.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute. How old was she?
Oh, she must have been like 8 or 10 years old.
Okay, I have a 9-year-old across the street from me in this house I've been living in for a few months now, and she came over to me one day and she's talking and I'm like, "This child's like a little prodigy, man." She was like, "Do you ever hear the trees talk to you?" She said, "Mother tree, like she whispers, she talks to me all the time." And I believe her. I'm like, "Of course this tree talks to you. Like why wouldn't she?" I
Cool.
totally think the tree probably does talk to her and she's telling me all these things. I'm like, "Dude, you're more wise than half the adults I know. This is amazing."
Yeah, they're
Mm,
so wise, like that's why like Christ talks a lot about if you want to see the kingdom of God, look at a child.
yeah. They're
Yeah.
just not always rational or logical, so as adults we dismiss their wisdom.
Of course, right?
Yeah.
But their wisdom is to bring us out of the rational and logical and into the joy, which brings more things to enjoy, which brings more happiness and fulfillment in our lives because we're more free.
Yeah. I think dogs can do that too.
Oh my God, I know dogs are amazing. I love them.
Yeah, they're so good at just teaching you to just be present without having to, think
Yeah,
about being present.
and they're all so unique, like you see a
Mhm.
wiener dog and then you see a Frenchie with like the long tongue and like they're just their own little characters and they don't try to
Mhm.
be anything else.
Yeah, yep, it's so perfect. They're perfect. They're perfect in my eyes.
Funny, funny
Uh,
dog backwards is God.
yeah, there's not a coincidence in that one, I don't
Uh-uh.
think.
Like
Uh-uh.
unconditional love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you had a pretty mystical experience yourself.
Yeah.
And I won't discredit or dismiss or create a story that's not every gonna be everyone's story. Maybe it is. Maybe it could be at some point. But for somebody who isn't there yet, they're not having that type of mystical experience, but they are in a grave amount of like pain,
Mhm.
disease, dysfunction, disease, um, and maybe they're at a place where unfortunately they don't have the means to financially support themselves to hire a coach or do group programs like yours. What would be a few practical steps that you would suggest that they start to take today?
That's a great question. Um, the practical steps that I would say is everything that you're doing for your symptoms or whatever's going on, stop all of it. All the affirmations, all the positive thinking, all the subconscious work, all the modalities, all the hypnosis stuff, stop it all.
Mm. And
And
then what?
trust that it will be presented by you living your life. And trust that the more that you enjoy your life and start to be real in your authenticity and not concerned about how others perceive you, you will be met with all of the uncomfortable feelings in your life. And the one other thing is to stop trying to understand what your symptom means, to stop trying to figure it out, and to rest in the peace that surpasses all understanding. When you do that, it will present itself, but it
Mm.
starts with you letting go.
What I like this, and this is great. What though would you say if there's somebody listening and they're like, okay, I get it. He makes sense. Like I hear him. This sounds amazing, but I'm bedridden and I can't even get out of bed. I'm so ill I can't go out. Like
Yeah.
how do I start to trust? How do I
Mm-hmm.
live my joy? How do I live authentically when I can't even get out of bed?
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing where, people they come to me and they're like, "Oh, I say I can't afford your coaching. I can't afford the thing." I was like, "Is it you that can't afford it? Or is it the parameters that you put on what God wants to give you and you deserve? Right? Because what happens is, I've seen it over and over again, is people, they come to me and they take a step forward in faith and they trust in the uncertainty that they will be met while they take this step. Faith is a 50-50 job. And so what happens is when they take the steps in uncomfortability, they're met with all of the feelings in which they didn't want to let go of, right? So if someone has a hard time trusting, it's directly linked to their finances. But once they actually start to challenge that paradigm consistently, then they're met with all of the anger and uncomfortability and grieving around having to let go and trust that they don't know what's going to happen.
Mm.
So someone who's in that position, a lot of the times it's because they're afraid not to spend on something, but they're afraid to accept and trust help, that they're afraid that it won't work. But the afraid of it won't work is simply keeping them from having an experience of trusting and being hurt, because that's what their previous experience was.
Mm-hmm. And you're saying this having had experience of going through so many different modalities for it to only not work.
100%.
So you completely understand that it's a very rational fear. Like after you go through all these different things and nothing works, you feel so hopeless that
Yeah.
it's not it's not abnormal to feel the fear.
I'll give you a little simple analogy. No, and you're right. It's not unnormal to feel the fear. Very, very real fear, in a sense of the fear keeps the person safe from something new. So a simple analogy is like if I tell you to put up your hand and make a fist, and I say, okay, squeeze that fist as hard as you can for 3 days straight. You would get tired and exhausted. If I told you to squeeze it as hard as you possibly can and not to let go, you couldn't do it. You would be so tired and so exhausted if you did that for 3 days straight. So what happens is that's what people do, is they squeeze so hard, they control so much, and then they exhaust themselves so much that they get to the point where they have no option but to open their fist. And when they open their fist, that's when they're out of the way. So people have to sometimes get to that point before they let go of control, because everything in their life is showing them they're out of control.
Right.
Right? But the out of control is the blessing. That's the gift. Because in that out of control, the person is put in a position where they have to trust the uncertainty and they have to ask for help.
Right.
Or they don't, and that's their choice. But ultimately, it's the person who has to step through the door and start to open back up to love and trust love and receive love, even if it hurts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Especially from ourselves too.
Yeah. And that's where the person is met with the fear of enjoying something instead of controlling the something in which they want to enjoy.
Controlling something they want to enjoy. I'm trying to grasp that. Fear of enjoying something
Yeah. So
instead of controlling something they want to enjoy.
yeah. So if everything in our life, if you knew without a doubt that at every moment you're provided for, taken
Hmm.
care of, that you're loved unconditionally, that there's
Hmm.
no wrong move that you can make. There's
Yeah.
no plan that God hasn't lined up in your life that has brought you in the direction that you are now. Like you look back on your life, everything that happened for a reason, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, and we can honestly say that everything that happened, even if it was shitty or felt shitty, was probably the best thing that could have happened. So when we start to live our lives in that way, we send the message that it's safe to trust and continue to step forward. But when we limit ourselves by the limitations that we put on God, we start to play God, and we need to understand it, which creates more fear, which creates more disharmony. It's kind of ironic. The moment we actually doubt is the moment that we actually create disease.
Interesting. Okay.
So yeah, so the person is being taught to trust, to be brought into a situation where in their weakness they can trust love.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. Because the person, when they're going through this stuff, they oftentimes have to hide because why? Because they don't want anyone to see them and they don't want to be a burden, right? So internally, they think their feelings are a burden.
Right. Right.
So therefore, they hide, right?
Absolutely.
So it's easier to stay in bed than it is to be a burden on someone, but that's just the parameters that they put on themselves to keep them from showing up as they are.
Right. Okay. This makes sense. All right. I have one more big question for you.
Sure.
Because I don't know, we'll see if you have just one here. But if I told you, hey, you're here on this earth
Mm.
at this time to only spread one message, what would that message be?
Oh, 100%. The peace that surpasses all understanding.
Peace surpasses all understanding.
That's it. That is it. That
I love
is,
it. You knew it.
oh, that's my message.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Some people, they either know it or they're like, one thing I want to share some.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's it. That's the peace that
the
surpasses all understanding.
I love it. Can you share? We've already obviously talked briefly about how you ended up finding yourself in a position of being a coach and supporting people on their journeys now through your own experiences. Can you share a little bit about what services you do offer and what options are for people?
Yeah, of course. So I have three options. So first of all, I created a program that I just want to give back to people for a very affordable price. It's $100 and it's a video module program that takes people from point A to point B. It takes them through all of the journey to and the physiology and the understanding to eventually let go of understanding. And it's to take them through the journey of starting to let go of these symptoms and disease and set the foundation for the life that they truly deserve and the birthright of living a symptom-free life. And and then I also have one-on-one coaching sessions where it's just single sessions, and we start to uncover certain things, coping mechanisms, different behavioral traits inside of these things that, and put them into action too. Like I give people very actionable things to do in their day-to-day life where they can start to see dramatic shifts and dramatic change that naturally and organically bring up these things without going into the closet and looking at the deep, dark traumas. It's not about that. And then, and then I also have one-on-one coaching where I have This is for people who are really ready and very serious about coming back to wholeness in their lives, ready to take a step forward and take action. And this is an 8-week ongoing coaching where I have ongoing communication with people through voice and text message, and basically take them along this journey and meet on a weekly basis and start to really go into these things and start to bring this person back to a state of creating from joy and taking the pressure off of themselves and starting to come back to being that child that just wants to come out and be free and let go of this idea that there needs to be something healed or fixed or done.
That is awesome. That's really great that you have that sorry, the what you call it, the video program, the
Mm-hmm.
module program for
Yeah,
$100. That's extremely reasonable for it's almost that's like pretty I feel pretty confident to say then that that's realistic. I feel like for anybody if they truly want to, if they felt
exactly.
like your message resonated and they do want to take the next step and go
Yeah,
out on a limb, that's a
yeah.
very low cost entry.
And there's yeah, I made it options for people, and and I've had people where you know they had no money, and I've had it where I just given them the program because I just feel for them, but I stopped doing that because I don't want to send the message that everyone is not abundant to God's grace. Like I've seen it over and over and
Yeah.
over in my life, and like I'll share a story about this where it's like I'm with my clients, and the majority of people, they have a hard time with trusting that they can spend in something that they enjoy and they want and they know and they feel that itch inside and they go, yes, I want to do this. And then they hear the price and they go, oh, I can't afford that. It's a bit too much. And so I'll share this story with you. When I came to Bali a while back, I I had always been tied around money and self-worth. For me, money was like, if I didn't have money, no one would want to be with me. I wouldn't be able to be in a relationship and I'd be alone and I would have to, you know, uh, no one would want me. That was my thing tied around money. So when I got to Bali a while back, I was put in a situation where all of the money that I had was stripped from me. It was taken in a way where I just had no money. So I had to move out of my house and I moved into a friend's place and I was on the couch. And I was at like this emotional point where I just felt worthless. I was just what the hell? Like, can I get a break? Like, what's going on here? And I just was sitting on the couch and I just started like weeping and just like the deepest tears of just wanting to die and didn't want to be there at that point, and was just like, what, like I'm useless, I got nothing. And I was sitting there and all of a sudden I get a message on my phone, and it's my lawyer, and he messages me, and I wasn't supposed to get any money from a car accident 2 years prior to sitting on that couch. So I was supposed to get it 2 years later. And he messaged me and he said, hey, I sent you the proposal, check your email. And I was like, what the hell? So I checked my email. He said, so I managed to get you $4,000, but I didn't think that was good enough. So I got you $21,000. If you sign today, you get the money tomorrow. And I was like, you're kidding. And he's like, no. And I was like, and I just started laughing and weeping and crying. And at that moment, I was brought back to another situation where I was in Vancouver a while back and I had the same thing happen and the same amount of money. I had no money and I booked an acting gig and I booked a Super Bowl Jeep Cherokee commercial and it gave me $21,000. And I
Oh,
shit you not, I was sitting there going, oh my God, this whole time it was to bring me to feel the worthlessness of what this was for me. Because even if I got $1 million, I wouldn't be able to keep it because I wouldn't think I was deserving of it.
Right.
So what I say with people is that, like, when you step forward into things that you deserve, you'll be met with all of the feelings in which you feel you don't deserve them,
Right. Which then you
which
get to be aware of and then choose something new,
not even that.
right?
Which just releases them naturally because it's just energy. That's all it is. Money is just energy. It's just the energy of trust and enjoyment. When we spend in joy, it gives more things to enjoy. Therefore, we get more money because we spend the things we enjoy.
Right. And so you're going to be met with the uncomfortable feelings, but the fact is you're taking action into
Yeah,
aligning to the life you want.
yeah.
It's kind of like what
You're, yeah.
you have to live like you already have it.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Like Christ says, uh,
Mhm.
live your life as if everything is already done, and pray as if it's already so, and rejoice in the fact that it is.
Right. Okay. Okay, I get it.
Right?
It literally comes down to taking action, kind of like the day I danced. It was like,
Yeah,
okay, that's
exactly.
action. You have to like live it.
Yeah. If we're whole
Yep.
beings and we only take action on one front, then we're not committing to our wholeness.
Right.
Right? So we can take action verbally, but until we step forward, nothing's going to happen. But if we take action verbally, physically, and we come back to trusting in joy that whatever presents itself, it might bring up fears, and that's okay. But we continue to say, hey, right now, I am freaked out about this. But you know what? I choose to trust.
Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Exactly, right? Because it's not about not being, it's not about feeling, it's about feeling all these emotions, but not being in them, right? That's why Christ says, do not be afraid. It doesn't say do not feel fear, do not be afraid.
Right. Ah, that's so good. I love it. I feel like there's like so many things I'm learning through our conversation today, so I absolutely have no doubt that it will bring so much value to anyone who's listening to this.
Yeah, it's
So, thank you so much for connecting with me and sharing your voice, your message, and your experiences with myself and everyone listening. I really do appreciate it.
awesome. Yeah. And yeah, I just want to end off and just say, you know, everything that I said is wrong and everything that I said is right.
Right, that ain't that the truth. Jeff, how can people connect with you?
They can connect with me on my Instagram at mind_body_healer, or they can connect with me on my website at mindbodyhealer.com. And
Awesome. I
if
love it.
they're in Bali, they can just come out and surf. And
Do you
yeah,
live in Canggu?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah.
I love Bali. All right, Jeff. Thank you so much once again. I really appreciate it. I feel like more people need to spread the message that you're spreading, and more people need to hear it. It's definitely one of empowerment, which is something I'm passionate about. So, yes, once again, thank you so much. And I will drop all the links in the show notes to make sure people can connect with you and get in touch.
For sure. Yeah. And I just want to say one more thing, too. Like I said, I was a truth seeker, and I always got so curious about truth. And I was like, okay, well, if truth came down and it was in front of my face, would I even be willing to see it or even listen? And when I heard Jesus say, I am the truth, the way, and the life, I started to ask this question. I said, well, that's a bold statement. So either Jesus is the truth or he's a liar. You decide.
Fair enough. Thank you so much for that. That is a wrap. What are your thoughts? Some good food for thought, right? What are some of the little ways that you can begin to incorporate more joy into your life today, regardless of where you're at in your journey? Maybe it's just a simple step of beginning to believe that it is even possible for you. Do you have a story or a testimonial that you want to share? We all know that testimonials inspire hope, and I would love to have you share yours. Reach out to me and let's connect. Also, if you do have anyone that you would like to request as a guest on the podcast, let me know, and I will do my best to get them on the show. Until next time, enjoy your partner eye gazing experience and create a great week.